All right, here we go. We are live right here on Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic Wednesday. And no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, we appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. There is so much to get to on the docket today. New James Harden update. Did Tyrese Maxey call out Glenn Rivers? Nick Nurse spilling the beans on a pivotal roster decision. We're going to take a look at some vet min free agent targets for Philadelphia, do some bold predictions, and take your questions as well. We're emanating live from our Chat Sports studios here. This has been your home for year-round Sixers coverage as well as free agency coverage on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers, and I hope that all of you hang out with us all throughout the day. And for those of you who are here already right from the jump, we had 30 people waiting. Now we're up to 72 people watching live. Real one, roll call. If you enjoyed the show, we appreciate you for being here. So give me a real one down in the chat, and we'll start to give you some shout-outs here. Brian Lippincott is in the house. Matt Croner, Daniel Lennox, Tim Starr, Ohana, G-Man, Tommy Velasquez getting in there first, giving us our first real one. Continue to get those real ones here in the chat because I just want to thank all of you for being here at the start of the show. Jrue, real one. LaShawn Cooper is a real one. Luigi, Walter Miller as always. Nate Phillips Williams, always a real one. Reggie Clark, tapping in as a real one here. Maya's World, real one all day, every day. Go Philadelphia 76ers. We have James Freeman, John Wick, Michael Marcial, all in the crib right now. As for what we're getting into on today's 76ers Now Live, it's been a blast to be able to grow this channel, by the way. That's why we continue to do these live shows. By the way, Nick Roloff, the homie, on the ones and twos today. Latest on James Harden coming your way. Tyrese Maxey dissing Glenn Rivers. New rule on the show, can't call him Doc Rivers. There's only one Doc in the history of the Sixers. It's Dr. J. Julius Irving. Nick Nurse spilling the tea on a certain player who he told Tyrese Maxey on his podcast that's going to make the roster. We'll take a look at the latest Sixers trade rumors and some free agent targets who the Sixers can bring in on a vet min deal. So really all of that is coming your way. Can't wait to dive into all of it. As for that update on James Harden here, we'll expand further on this coming up here in just a few moments. Shelburne said this yesterday on ESPN that Harden and the Sixers have spoken again. He still reiterated that he wants to be traded. Now, this is not a demand, it's a request. I guess there's a fine line there. And I think the Sixers have said, okay, we will try to trade you, but there is no hurry to do this. And I think the Sixers understand here that they have the leverage. I mean, James has picked up his option. This is an opt-out or opt-into his contract, and he's going to be a free agent after this year. So at some point, he needs to play, whether that is in Philadelphia or that is elsewhere. So that's the latest James Harden update from Ramona Shelburne of ESPN. And again, that'll be a part of our first segment. A lot more thoughts coming your way just around the corner here. What we do here at Chat Sports, we're the most interactive YouTube channel out there, and we love for all of you to be a part of the show because we're all about audience interaction, but I know my fellow Philadelphians have some great basketball intellect. I want you to be on the program. There's a couple of ways for you to do that. Treat it like a sports talk radio call-in show. 97.5 The Fanatic right now in Philly going through a lot of trouble. 94 WIP. They're flourishing in that market. We're flourishing here on YouTube. So treat it like a sports talk radio call-in line. Use the hashtag Sixers to get your questions featured on the show. I guarantee you, if you send in a super chat of any variety, 99 cents to $200 or more, you're going to skip the line and we will answer what you have to say first. So hashtag Sixers or super chat to get your questions and comments featured on the show. And if you so kindly want to donate to the show, we like to do fun things if you send us in a tip, aka a super chat. $5, I'm going to crack a beer here. $10, we will spin a roulette wheel. Whatever it lands on, that's what we do. $20, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. That means that the weekend is quickly approaching. I'll take some shots of Patron. $50 for a beer bong, and for a $100 super chat, I will do the fastest shotgun that you ever see. Yeah, we like to party. Yeah, we like to have fun. Ryan Rowe, Daniel, Walter, Corey, Matt, Nate Phillips, Tommy Velasquez, Agent Skyfall, and Jason Velez all hanging out with us here in the early going of the show. And we're about to get the official show started here in just a few moments as we talk about the Sixers free agency plans, some targets, and of course, the existing players currently on this roster. Do also want to talk about Filip Petrusev, who is a 23-year-old from Serbia who the Sixers drafted in the second round, 50th overall back in 2021. He actually played his college ball at Gonzaga from 2018 to 2020. He's been playing in the Euro League, and for those of you watching Sixers Summer League action, he's been playing. And that is the player who Nick Nurse kind of spilled the beans on during the Tyrese Maxey podcast when he said that Filip Petrusev is going to be on the Sixers roster. So now we're looking at a Sixers team that has a lot of bigs and a lot of centers. We're talking Joel Embiid, Mo Bamba. They re-signed Paul Reed, brought back Montrezl Harrell, and Filip Petrusev. That is 5 bigs who potentially might crack this Sixers roster, which does throw some questions into the fray here for the roster-building strategy that Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey have for this year one. Now, Rolly, are you familiar with Petrusev because you're a college hoops junkie from his time at Gonzaga?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say this before we moved on. I was like, I would consider myself one of the biggest college hoop heads in the Chat Sports offices.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember this dude playing at Gonzaga from 2018 to 2020. Listen, the record book showed that to be true, but I cannot put plays and highlights to memory. And we're talking some of the elite Gonzaga teams of all time. We're talking Final Fours. I just cannot remember this dude playing. I don't know where the Sixers found this guy and why they drafted and stashed him.
So 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020. 6.5 points per game, 2018, 2019. 2019, 2020. 33 starts, really. 17.5 points per game.
I just refuse to believe this is the true. You said in 2019-20?
Yes.
All right, let me look at that 2019-2020 Gonzaga
So he was
roster.
putting up numbers for Mark Few.
I would have felt like I would have remembered this dude.
Yeah, 7.9 rebounds and nearly a block per night. He played almost 26 minutes per game.
I don't even see him on the roster.
Didn't take many threes. That's not really a part of his game. But yeah, 2 years at Gonzaga.
Oh, there he is.
He was
Number
a drafting
3.
stash for Philly. 50th overall, 2021.
Dude,
Pretty wild.
I am still not believing this. I'm trying to look at the rest of
He
this
is a
team.
real person, I can confirm.
Killian Tilly, Corey Kispert was on that squad. Joel Ayayi. Drew Timme. Interesting.
Good squad.
17 points a game. I got to see how they finish.
Did Drew Timme, by the way, sign a UDFA deal anywhere? Is he not even playing in the summer league?
I felt like I saw him sign a two-way somewhere, but I don't think he's been playing in the summer league.
That's crazy.
You can hold on. Let me look
I mean, not going to be a good NBA player if
No,
he even
he's
makes
just
it
too
at all.
slow.
Milwaukee Bucks.
I knew he was somewhere.
Interesting.
He doesn't play. 2019, 20.
He was productive in limited action 3 days ago
Saga
for the Bucks.
schedule. Trying
So
to
yeah,
see.
that was the front court. It was Drew Timme
See, this is the type of stuff
and
I'm
Filip
talking
Petrusev.
about. They were the number 1 overall team in the country.
Yeah.
I don't remember this dude
Yeah.
whatsoever. That was the team that lost 2 games the entire year going into March.
Yep.
What is going on?
There you go. You learn something new every day, my
I'm going
brother.
to have to, you know what I'm going to do tonight? When it's all said and done, I'm putting the head on the pillow. I'm watching Filip Petrusev highlights at Gonzaga.
All right. There you go. So Petrusev, we'll talk about him on today's show. And when I say that Nick Roloff is a college basketball junkie, like probably the biggest college basketball fan, him and Patrick Seatman, that I've ever met, and we're happy to have him, blessed to have him here at Chat Sports. He doesn't even know Petrusev, but he'll know more about him here in just a little while. We're also going to talk about some vet min targets who the Sixers could still sign in NBA free agency. More thoughts on these players coming up around the corner. We're going to talk Christian Wood, Kelly Oubre Jr., John Wall, TJ Warren, and Terrence Ross. All realistic options for the Sixers here in NBA free agency. This is what I want to do right now, though. We have 172 people watching live. That's great. Only 33 likes, though. Smash that thumbs up icon, like the video. Show me that you're ready for the show to start and you're ready to talk some Sixers basketball with yours truly. Smash that thumbs up icon, like the video. Can we get to 100 likes here in the next minute or two? I'm going to challenge everybody out there because I always tell my bosses here at Chat Sports, Philadelphia fans are not bad people. We're just very passionate. We're not bad sports fans. We're knowledgeable sports fans. So show the bosses here at Chat Sports that that is indeed the case by hitting that thumbs up icon and liking the video.
In the words of Mark Cuban on Kyrie Irving, maybe the Philadelphia sports fans are just misunderstood.
Misunderstood. What a funny quote from Mark Cuban on Kyrie Irving as well. Giordano Molina, Bruce Davis, Clinton Gray, Maya's World, Darren Boyd, and Brian, all the recent commenters here. And the more people who like the video, honestly, the more people who come in. For instance, we picked up 26 likes just like that, and we're already up to 191 people watching live. So the audience will continue to grow all throughout the day. If you comment, you like the video, you share the video, there is so much to discuss on the docket today. And the first person to send in a super chat allows me to crack my drink here because I like drinking brews and talking hoops with all of the homies out there. So let's get the party started. Philadelphia 76ers Now Live officially begins, and it's underway right now. All right, here we go. Coming your way on today's Philadelphia 76ers Now. We have yet another James Harden update as this continues to be one of the most talked about storylines across the NBA. Nick Nurse spilling the beans on the Tyrese Maxey podcast about a Sixers roster addition. And Tyrese Maxey, did he take a shot at Glenn Rivers during that podcast with Nick Nurse? Before we unpack all of that, this is your home for year-round Sixers coverage and throughout free agency. Really, ever since the Sixers lost that Game 7, we've been pumping out so much content here on the show. It's been the best, most successful and historic stretch in the history of this program, and to be your fearless leader, it's a blessing for me. I don't take it for granted. Let's continue to grow the 76ers Now community. We're 592 people away from 12,000 subscribers. Hit that sub button to stay in the know with all things Sixers year-round. Let's begin here with the latest on James Harden. According to Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, he has, quote, reiterated his trade request, and the Sixers are, quote, in no hurry to do a deal. Here's the latest from Shelburne on ESPN. They have spoken again, James Harden and Philadelphia, and he still reiterated that he wants to be traded. Now, this is not a demand. It is instead a request. And I think that the Sixers have said, okay, we will try to trade you, James, but there is no hurry to do this right now. And I think that the Sixers understand here that they have the leverage in this situation. I mean, James has picked up his option. This is an opt-in to his contract, and he's going to be a free agent after this year. So at some point, he needs to play, whether that is in Philadelphia or elsewhere. And it's also become clear over the last couple of days that the Sixers are open here to bringing Harden back. The reigning MVP and Joel Embiid said in that interview with Rachel Nichols that he wants James Harden to return, and Patrick Beverley, during his introductory press conference, asked James Harden to stay. Those two really good friends, their moms, still best friends who live in the Houston area, and the Sixers have made some of these moves to appease Harden. He's close with Beverley. He's close with Montrezl Harrell. He's tight going back to those Rocket days with PJ Tucker. Tyrese Maxey sent out a GIF on Twitter when the news became apparent that maybe James Harden could come back as well. So I think the Sixers players are open to the idea of the Beard returning to Philadelphia. I don't love his game. I wish the Sixers would have moved on. Unfortunately, though, the free agency crop was pretty lame and not really stacked with legitimate playmakers to replace that production from James Harden. More from Shelburne here. There is a sense that if they can give it some time, and he's cool with his teammates. He's been talking to Joel Embiid. He's been talking to Patrick Beverley, PJ Tucker, that eventually maybe these fences can be mended and there is a path to reconciliation with James Harden. But for now, he has reiterated his trade request. And again, Shelburne saying it is a trade request and not a trade demand. But the messaging is clear here. James Harden is clearly not happy with Daryl Morey, and they have a long-standing relationship going all the way back to when Daryl Morey had traded for him when he was running basketball operations in the infancy of his career with the Houston Rockets. It's not like Harden is unhappy with the players on the Sixers team. He's just unhappy here with the messaging from Daryl Morey and the fact that Morey didn't communicate with Harden and his camp throughout free agency and in the lead up to it. The Sixers, on the other hand here, Embiid, Beverley, the other players, they are telling Harden, we want you back, and we will welcome you with open arms. And, you know, you think back and you comb through some of the reports from Brian Windhorst and some of the other NBA insiders where they've said the Sixers are open for Harden to come back. That is Daryl Morey telling them that, yeah, we would like a return. Remember, this time of year on the NBA calendar, it is all about the leverage play and gaining that upper hand in these negotiations with these tactics, and that's what we're seeing transpiring here. At the end of the day, I actually think Harden is going to come back to the Sixers unless Daryl Morey can get a superstar back for James Harden. So if you want Harden back as well, just like these Sixers players here, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. If you don't want James Harden back, I want you to comment why right now in the comment section. We're only getting started on today's show, but first, how about this deal thanks to our friends at Fanatics? Michael Rubin hosting the White Party, also giving us some great deals here at Chat Sports. The Sixers t-shirt shorts combo was $60, limited time only, $33. How do you get it? You use that link down below, chatsports.com/76ers combo. A lot of our viewers have purchased this over the last couple of weeks as we've been putting this on the show. Get your hands on it right now. Now let's get to story number 2. Nick Nurse spilling the beans about an addition to the Sixers roster for the 2023-2024 season. On Tyrese Maxey's podcast, he said that Filip Petrusev is going to be on this team. Here is the quote from the new Sixers head coach, who, by the way, is coaching the Sixers Summer League. My man loves ball. We're getting our young guys a lot of minutes. Jane Springer, Lewis King, and some of these guys, Filip, who's going to be on the roster this year, but we're also tactically trying to build. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the former Sixers second-round pick, he's 23 years old. He is Serbian. He was selected by Philadelphia in the second round, 50th overall back in 2021 out of Gonzaga. His second year with the Zags, they only lost like 2 regular season games that year. Jrue Timmy was on that squad. Joel Ajayi, he averaged like 17.5 points per game. And from that point when he was drafted, he's been a drafting stash, playing in the EuroLeague over the last couple of years. Now, if the Sixers don't bring him on board and have him as an official member of the Sixers roster, he's probably going to go back overseas. That's what his agent said. Here is that quote. If he doesn't sign in the NBA until August, then I'll listen to his international team first because he really likes the environment there. In fact, I will not consider European options. I think that Filip will be in the NBA next year. If not then, of course, he will be overseas. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Scouting, Filip Petrusev. 10.5 points per game so far in the NBA Summer League, Utah and in Las Vegas. More than 6 rebounds per game. He had 4 blocks against the Dallas Mavericks on Monday night, so he's a pretty good shot blocker who has decent lateral mobility, even though he's not the most vertical leaper out there. What I've noticed about him is that he has pretty good touch around the rim. He has this mid-range push shot, which can range from around the basket to about 13, 15 feet, where he gets the rock and just has that push shot. So that's some of the touch around the rim that I've talked about. He is kind of working on this jab step, mid-range shot. The consistency there, it's a little bit wonky, but you can certainly see that he does have some potential to maybe crack an NBA rotation and be on this Philadelphia roster this upcoming season. So will Petrusev make the team? We're talking end of October, regular season opener. Is he on it as a former draft and stash who breaks through? Type on or type off. One more story to get to. Tyrese Maxey ripping Glenn Rivers. Stay tuned for that. But first, interact with me on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me there at Chase_senior. It's been a blast as a guy who grew up in the Philadelphia area, went to Temple, lifelong Sixers fan, to hear from all of you. For you, those of you sliding in the DMs, continue to do that at Chase_senior. As always, appreciate your support. Tyrese Maxey ripping Glenn Rivers kind of subtly. New rule on the show, we can't call him Doc Rivers any longer. It has to be Glenn because there's only one Doc in the history of the Sixers. That is Dr. J. Julius Erving. He was very complimentary, was Tyrese Maxey, of Nick Nurse in an interview with Nurse on the Tyrese Maxey podcast. And make of this what you want. But here's what Maxey had to say about Nurse. One thing I really thought about was how you say you try new things and you test them out. Like, that's crazy. I've never had a coach like that actually tests things out in the games. That right there is a pretty telling sentiment and pretty telling quote from Tyrese Maxey, because this comes a couple of weeks after Jaden Springer said something very similar about Nurse, which was kind of a slight, in my opinion, at Glenn Rivers and the way that he coaches, tries to develop and makes adjustments on the fly or lack thereof. Here's what Springer, the first-round pick from a couple of years ago, said about the first practice with Nurse. He came on strong, pause. I can tell he's a coach that really wants to help the players learn, and he wants to teach. He was stopping drills and stepping in and giving us points on what to do here, what to do there. I haven't seen that too much since I've been in the league. So you have Maxey and you have Springer saying very similar things. And a part of being a coach, winning games, which Doc Rivers did a lot, but it's the tactical adjustments that you can make inside a game, throughout a playoff series, but developing talent, not letting bad habits continue, stepping in and stopping those bad habits so that they don't translate to the actual game performance. And that's what Nick Nurse is trying to hone in on. And I think a big reason why Nurse is coaching the Summer League, something that Doc Rivers would never do, he's trying to instill his culture with this organization right from the get-go, because he understands in the modern NBA landscape what it takes to win an NBA championship, having won it in 2019 as a rookie coach with the Toronto Raptors. Now, if you enjoyed the show, we've been pushing out videos every single day, sometimes multiple shows per day, grinding and hustling here because that's what we do. That's what Philadelphians do. They give me a real one down below. Real one. Roll call. All right, 320 people watching live. Thanks to everybody who's here. We are 12 likes away from 100. If you like that first segment, like the video. We'll give some shout-outs here. Eagles Guru is back, one of our Super Chat MVPs and loyal viewers from Eagles Now, also a great graphics designer as well. Anthony Gonzalez, Tyler, Daniel, Luffy, Quiz, all in the chat. Walter Miller, real one. Quiz, King Soul, real one. Bruce Davis, real one. Quiz said, start Maxey like yesterday. Well, he's got to start. He started for this team last year, even though it's a little bit weird how he's coming in off the bench a little bit at the start of the year. Brian thinks that Petrusev going to be on that roster. Keith Lenoir, also a real one. We are only getting started on today's show, but we can't get to our second segment until we get to 100 likes. We're 4 likes away from reaching that milestone. Hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. Our Super Chat menu for today, still waiting on that first donation. When we get that, I'm going to be able to crack my beer. $5 is a beer cheers. $10, we will spin the roulette wheel, whatever is on it. That's what we do. $20, we'll take some shots. The Patron is here. $50 for a beer bong, $100 for a shotgun. And if you don't want to send in a Super Chat, it's all good. You can like the video, comment, most importantly, subscribe to the show. We also want you to be a part of the program here. Couple of ways for you to do that. Hashtag Sixers or Super Chat to get your questions and your comments on the show. Like Maya's World right here. Chase Senior, Maya's World. What about this? What about this trade? James Harden to the Miami Heat for Duncan Robinson and also Kyle Lowry and also Jovic and a future pick to the 76ers. So there's no way that the Miami Heat would do that. Lowry on that expiring deal, he'd come back to Philadelphia. I would like it if he was a lot cheaper. But producer Nick Roloff, actually a Miami Heat fan, I don't think that the Heat would ever entertain doing this, and you love Jovic.
Well, listen, could I see Harden working with Miami? Sure. There's been interest in the past, before James Harden got moved from Houston to Brooklyn, there was a lot of interest from Miami, and they were intrigued about acquiring him, and obviously it didn't work out, and he went to Brooklyn. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Heat were potentially interested in Harden. I don't think they would be willing to trade Jovic, who they're very bullish on.
And a future pick.
I'm very bullish on, and you mentioned that future pick. I just don't see a way where they're sending anyone really valuable. Sure, maybe they can trade a pick. Maybe 2 picks.
They could use a guy who could pressure the rim to take some heat off Jimmy Butler a little bit, but I don't think that's the package that'll do that. I think they're going to continue to swing for Damian Lillard. Eagles Guru, my guy with the $5 donation. Wendy said that Daryl Morey has something up his sleeve. The best 2 guesses as to what that is. My best guess, it's like a Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine trade. Now, the Sixers would have to put something else in that acquisition to make it somewhat realistic. So that's my best guess. Now, the same day that Brian Windhorst said that, the Sixers that night signed Montrezl Harrell. The tweets and the photos and the GIFs and the memes, they were fantastic that night because it's like Daryl Morey's sleeve. Here it is. Montrezl Harrell, little face of him up that sleeve. So very good entertainment value there.
I'll throw one more name if you're thinking big trade. You said Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine. I understand they re-signed Paul Reed. Montrezl Harrell, they got Mo Bamba. Let me throw Pascal Siakam out for you. Interesting stretch 4. Maybe it's Tobias Harris.
Play the wing a little bit.
You have success, obviously, with Nurse, with Siakam in the past. He's been Siakam's coach for the past 4 years. Maybe Siakam would be open to playing for Nurse, and you bring Harden back, and your core 4 is Harden, Maxey, Siakam, and Embiid. I don't know what type of picks exactly Philadelphia can offer, but Harris and a bunch of picks, maybe that gets it done.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, and the video did really well. Siakam, contract year. Tobias Harris, contract year. Some of this buzz about a Siakam trade has started to pick up over the last couple of weeks. I think you'd have to put Harris in there, another player, and or draft capital to make that happen. Eagles Guru finally able to crack that drink. Kawhi Jones said, "Happy dad?" Yes, it's actually a happy mom, which I didn't even realize was a thing. But yes, cheers to everybody. We appreciate you for watching.
Now, which flavors do you prefer, the standard Happy Dads, or do you like the new Happy Moms with the raspberry?
I actually like the Happy Moms a little bit better.
I agree.
Some of the Happy Dads are like synthetic tasting, like the flavors. I just don't really like them. The raspberry, though, it's like refreshing and quality.
I need to try the grape. I've yet to try it. I've only had the raspberry.
Those are good. That's the Death Row Records partnership. By the way, Happy Dad, not a sponsor, but hit us up. Yes, the Death Row Records grape Happy Dads are very, very good. Death Row Records, shout out to Tupac. All right, segment number 2 is about to get underway. We've had a peak in audience here. So for those of you coming here, make sure you subscribe to the show. We're only getting started. We are doing 4 segments on our live show today. We're obviously down to party. We have drinks, we have tequila, we have a roulette wheel. Segment number 2 is about to get underway here. And make sure you subscribe to the show for year-round Sixers coverage here. So let's get into our next segment here. And we're going to take a look at some vet min free agent targets that's coming up right now. So we know that the Philadelphia 76ers are tight on cash. They are cash-strapped after re-signing Paul Reed, matching that offer sheet for the Utah Jazz. They are into the luxury tax right now. So to fill out this roster, they can really only afford vet min type of players. So on today's show, we're going to take a look at some of the top vet min players who make sense for Philadelphia. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because when the Sixers make a signing, we cover it here on the show. We go in further detail about all of these acquisitions. That's what we've done with Patrick Beverley, Mo Bamba, Montrezl Harrell, Paul Reed, and that's why the channel has never done better than what it is doing so far this offseason. Join the movement. It's 76ers Now. I'm Chase Sr. So you take a gander at the Sixers' current lineup as currently constructed, and this would be the starting five if the season were to start tonight. James Harden would be your point guard, Tyrese Maxey as your two. You still have Tobias Harris coming off that disappointing season at that wing spot. PJ Tucker is in there for his defense. Hopefully this year he takes some more corner threes, locking it down at that 4 as he can guard a couple of wings on the floor. And then you have the reigning MVP in Joel Embiid. The bench, less of a question than it was just a few days ago. Patrick Beverley, one of your backups. You bring back Paul Reed. DeAnthony Melton is one of the top two-way backup guards who can really fortify that second unit across the NBA. You have Daniel House, who is coming back to Philly. Jaden Springer has been flashing throughout the NBA Summer League. The re-signing of Montrezl Harrell didn't make any sense. I'm curious to see what happens with Furkan Korkmaz just because I'm not sure Philadelphia wants to bring him back on that price tag. Mo Bamba will be one of Joel Embiid's backups, and will Filip Petrusev actually make the roster? Nick Nurse, as we talked about here on the show, did spill the beans apparently on Tyrese Maxey's podcast, saying that Petrusev, the draft and stash from a couple of years ago who went to Gonzaga, will be on this team. So right around the corner, vet min free agent targets for Philadelphia. But how about today's poll question? I want you to grade the Sixers roster right now, NBA 2K style. So the meter here, 1 to 100. Let us know right now in the comment section. Vet min target number 1, Christian Wood. And it's actually somewhat surprising that he hasn't been picked up. And he could go for a vet min deal because Christian Wood is a really solid player and brings value to Philadelphia here. Last couple of years, he's put up some really impressive numbers. It goes back to 2020, 2021 when he started to find a groove, 21 points. 9.5 rebounds, 37% from 3. Year after that, Houston Rockets again, 18 points per game, 10 rebounds per, 39%. Now, both of those teams in Houston, they weren't quality squads, right? So the number's a little bit inflated, but last year with a solid Mavericks team before they fell apart down the stretch and openly tanked, 16.5 points per game, 7 rebounds, 51.5% from the field, and 37.5% from three-point range. So the three-point numbers, a consistent theme here with Christian Wood. And that's why I think he's a pretty valuable player and would fit well on this team, even though there's a little bit of a logjam in that front court on the Sixers roster. Thoughts on him? He's a big who can stretch the floor. He has always been a very good three-point shooter. Clean form, high release, very difficult to defend. The problem with Christian Wood is this. He is an absolutely horrific, in the words of Nick Roloff, defender. He can't play on the defensive end of the floor. He is a turnstile on that end. So you get him for his offense, which is really good for a big, but on the defensive end, he's a sieve. Everywhere he's been, there have been cultural questions. He's been a problem in the locker room, complaining, not getting along with teammates. And I think that's also a reason why quality teams don't want to bring him in, because he's known to be somewhat of a locker room cancer. And then lastly with Christian Wood, a cheap stretch 4 is certainly intriguing. You might have to make some moves on this roster to maybe let go of a big, but you can make the argument that outside of Joel Embiid, Christian Wood might be the most talented and gifted big on this Sixers roster. But it's like you run into a person who you meet at the bar and immediately you know you're just not going to get down with them. You know, they're not cool. They're not going to be friends. Do they ever change? Oftentimes they don't. Can Christian Wood change? Maybe not. Vet min target number 2, Kelly Oubre Jr. This is if he's willing to take a vet min deal. Still young, athletic wing, coming off a season this past year with Charlotte, awful team where, yes, his numbers were a little bit inflated like Christian Wood's on some of those bad teams. 20 points per game, 43% from the field, almost 32% from three-point range. When he did play with the Golden State Warriors, that's when he struggled a little bit. So when he's been on quality teams, the numbers haven't been all that good. When he's been on a quality team like Golden State, that's when he struggled to find his groove coming in off the bench. He's a better, more consistent player when he's starting, but obviously for Philadelphia, he's not going to crack that starting 5. barring injury. Thoughts on Oubre? I think he's still available for a reason. He's not the best defensive player. He would fulfill a need on the Sixers roster of being an athletic wing, which they currently lack and have failed to really address over the last couple of years. As evidenced by the numbers, he is not the most efficient player out there. Some nights, he'll look really good shooting the rock. Other nights, he won't be able to buy a bucket. He is an athletic wing, though, who can score. Backdoor cuts, certainly athletic enough to finish around the rim, absorb some contact because he can certainly leap. Corner three is probably where you want to have him. You don't want to have him chucking from the wing or from straight away. And he would bulk up this bench for Philadelphia, depending on what the price tag could be. Could be a pretty attractive player for the Sixers here in free agency. With that, let's ask you this. This will be our pinned comment. Make sure you head on down and drop those names. Who is your dream affordable free agent target on the vet min? It can be a player who we're talking about on the program today or somebody else. Either way, just let us know that name in the comment section. John Wall. So he has been holding workouts in Las Vegas throughout the NBA Summer League, and it's become increasingly clear that he might be completely washed, and this is what happens when you don't develop an outside shot. This past year with the Los Angeles Clippers, they needed somebody who could pressure the rim, take the rock to the 10, and really initiate that offense, just provide some ball pressure, right, on the offensive end. You know it's bad when they let go of John Wall and then brought in Russell Westbrook. 11 points per game last year for the Clippers, 5 assists. Here's the problem, though. 40% from the field, 30% from three-point range. And in 2 of the last 4 years, he hasn't even played. In 2021, 2022, it was because him and Houston couldn't reach a buyout. And then in 2019, 2020, it was the Achilles injury and then the affection that happened there. In 2020, 2021, he did put up solid numbers with Houston alongside Christian Wood, but that team back then was just not good. So you have to take that into account. A little bit of a grain of salt there with those statistics. Thoughts on Wall here as we continue to go player for player. He just might completely be cooked. And you can be athletic, but in today's NBA, when you're playing point guard, when you're playing shooting guard, taking it to the rim, throwing down some highlight-worthy dunks that are going to be shown on SportsCenter, that's cool and all. You have to be able to hit some outside shots. Similar plight to Russell Westbrook. When these guys came into the league, uber athletes, breathtaking athletes who could go rim to rim in a blink, and they could maneuver down the floor in beautiful fashion. Very few athletes have been able to show the level of explosion and speed with the ball in their hands like Russell Westbrook, John Wall, Derrick Rose. But what's a similar theme with a lot of those players? They decline very quickly, whether it be to injury or the lack of an outside shot. They never developed their three-point arsenal, and because of that, once their athleticism started to slip by the wayside, that's when their games declined. Not being able to shoot, a massive problem, but he's still somewhat athletic and create at least a little bit. You give him 10 minutes per night in the preseason, see what he can do. I might be willing to take a surprising flyer on John Wall. TJ Warren, like John Wall, hasn't played a lot of basketball over the last couple of years. He has been a player who has absolutely thrashed Philadelphia. And when he was playing in the NBA bubble, he was going off. What a weird time the NBA bubble was in 2020, by the way. Thank God we've come so far from those times. Warren has played, over the last 3 years, a total of 46 games. Back then, he was good for Indiana. This was a guy who kind of had a little bit of Kawhi Leonard to his game. Didn't really rely on the three-point shot, 3.5 three-point attempts per night, but use that body to kind of maneuver around the floor and get to that mid-range area to get a shot off. He was great that year, almost 20 points per game, 53.5% from the field, 40% from three, 3.5 three-point attempts per night. That was definitely a career year for a guy who up to that point had kind of been an NBA journeyman, spot role player, spot starter, but really the big problem with him, he's played a half season over the last 3. And then Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross, I actually still think can play, and he can help you out at that wing spot, which Philadelphia kind of needs right now. Last year, for a good Suns team, he's picked up and ends up playing pretty well. 8 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, 43% from the field, almost 37% from three. He has been overshadowed and hidden by playing for a bad Orlando Magic organization for the last several years. Now, you look at his numbers in 2020, 2021, 2019, 2020. On bad teams, he's been able to find Twine, put Biscuit in the basket. On good teams, you're probably going to slot him in for about 8 to 10 points per game, a guy who can hit that three and create just a little bit. Now, let me tell you this, if the Sixers sign any of these players, if they make a signing in general, we're going to talk about those moves in depth right here on the show. That's why you hit that sub button. You also see the link down below. And if you want to share your thoughts on Philadelphia's offseason with me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and even Threads. It's the same handle on all of those platforms, at Chase_Senior. Appreciate y'all for watching the show. Hop on board and join the movement here at Chat Sports. Another super chat coming in from Lion Fighter. He too is a real one. Roll call. Who would you prefer, Zach Lavine or Pascal Siakam, and why? Rolly, I'll bring you in on this conversation as well. I'm going Zach Lavine 7 days out of 7. I think that his game translates better to the playoffs. He can really get you a bucket at all three levels, whereas Siakam and his offensive package somewhat limited. Siakam definitely the longer and better defender, but Lavine on this team, and let's operate under the premise that you get rid of James Harden, right? You have Maxey as your point, Lavine as your go-to scorer. Maybe DeAnthony Melton is your starting two. PJ Tucker, Joel Embiid. I kind of like that starting five. So I'm going Lavine. What say you?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what is up with James Harden. It's kind of a cop-out answer. I'm so sorry, Lion Fighter. But if James Harden isn't on the roster, I think the clear answer is Zach Lavine. But if you do have Harden, I think it makes sense that you would rather trade for Siakam when you're talking about moving Tobias Harris for another star, because a core four, like I mentioned before that last segment, of Harden, Maxey in the backcourt, and with Siakam and Embiid in the front court, that is as good as a four-man rotation as there is in the NBA. You could probably argue it is the best four-man group in the association. But if you're getting rid of Harden, and then you have Lavine and Maxey in the backcourt paired up with Joel Embiid at center, that is a formidable big three that has the defense and offense of Maxey, the pure isolation scoring of Zach Lavine, and then obviously the MVP talent of Joel Embiid. That big three is very, very good, and they mesh together well. But if you're keeping Harden, I think the answer has to be Siakam, because putting Lavine at the three, I think it would just not work, and he would be
too clunky,
ineffective, because as much as Zach Lavine is a good shooter, and he is a really good shooter, I think the worst he shot over the past 4 years from three is 37.5%. He needs the ball in his hands to be the best. Put pressure on the rim, isolate, get to that step-back mid-range jumper. If he's relegated to a spot-up guy because Harden and Maxey are controlling the ball, I don't think it would work. So if you're keeping Harden, it has to be Siakam. Sorry for the long answer.
No, great answer at that. That's why Rolly is known to know ball. I do see this from Christopher Bolden. Do we not have the mid-level exception? The Sixers actually do have the mid-level exception. I was just more so talking about affordable free agent targets who are still very realistic. So coming into effect back on July 1, the NBA strips teams of the taxpayer mid-level exception if they're more than $17.5 million above the luxury tax line. Now, the Sixers are in the luxury tax after bringing back Paul Reed, but they're not more than $17.5 million over the luxury tax line. So they do have an MLE to use at their disposal if they do want to use that. Hashtag Sixers or Super Chat to get your questions and your comments here on the show. We're going to go to this one from Boombastic. Harden still wants out. Maxey is the long-term point guard. Who can we really get to replace Harden at the two? So if you traded James Harden, I'm not sure what superstar is out there that you could trade James Harden for. I've continued to say this. I think a realistic trade package would be something along the lines of, a Robert Covington, a Norm Powell, a Marcus Morris, a Terrence Mann in there would be awesome. Bones Highland in there would be great. I'm just not sure. Fast diminishing player who's logged the 7th most minutes among active players right now in the NBA. who's shown signs of decline is going to net you a star. And then you couple that with the fact that Damian Lillard is the marquee trade asset in the NBA right now, which kind of in a way diminishes and damages the value of Harden. So if you trade him away, you could get a Norm Powell back. He could give you 20 points per game. Norm Powell, Tyrese Maxey backcourt, Tyrese Maxey, Terrence Mann backcourt. I think could be pretty enticing. What that would be predicated upon is Maxey's not going to get relegated in any way. In fact, he would have to increase his game a little bit to maybe be a 22 points per game, 25 points per game guy to make up for that. Lion Fighter with another 5. That's another beer cheers for the homie. Also, am I blocked in the chat? I can only send super chats, and I can't participate in regular chats. Did Tyler Jones block me? LOL. Let me see.
I don't know what that's all about. I'll say maybe it was because he wasn't subscribed and we were in subscriber-only mode, but that is not the case. So now I am at a complete loss for words on why you wouldn't be able. We weren't in sub-only mode, right? No. So I'm at a little bit of a loss on why Lion Fighter would not be
I'm not sure.
able to chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat here. It says I could put you in timeout, but I would never. I could hide user on this channel, but I would never. And you can send in a super chat. So I'm not sure why your comments aren't working. Lion Fighter, there might be something in your YouTube settings that's off. So maybe go to your user settings to see. But we do appreciate the two $5 super chats. You're a real one, and cheers to you. But yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is there. We could show them the super chat menu. Then we'll get to segment number 3, our super chat menu. Why am I drinking? Well, a couple of $5 donations coming in from Lion Fighter. $10 will spin the wheel. It's a roulette wheel. It's really cool. If you want to see it, 10, 20 shots. We have some Patron here, 50 for a beer bong, 100 for a shotgun. What your super chats allow us to do, continue to give you year-round coverage of the Sixers. When I was hired here, March 1 of 2021, I was the 8th employee. Now we're well over 20. We had 4 studios. And now we've doubled our studios here at Chat Sports, so your support goes a long way in supporting the movement here. We do appreciate your support. It is a dream job for me, for sure. Coming up next here on Philadelphia 76ers Now Live, as we continue to keep it moving here on the show, bold predictions, and one of those bold predictions includes a trade for a player who we've been talking about here on the show. Segment number 3 getting underway, so let's do it. Welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now. I am your host, Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for being here with us, and no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate your support of the show. Before we dive into the program today, I want you to have fun here in the comments section. Rank these teams in the Eastern Conference. And where do you think the Philadelphia 76ers stand alongside the last 5 remaining teams in the Eastern Conference playoffs? Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Philadelphia 76ers, Milwaukee Bucks, and we'll throw the New York Knicks in there as well because it is a rival of Philadelphia. Rank these squads in the East heading into the 2023-2024 season. As for what we're breaking down on the show today, 76ers bold predictions for this upcoming season. We're going to have some fun with the show today, and let's dive into it. So bold prediction number 1. I think that James Harden is going to return to the Sixers. He's able to reconcile that relationship with Daryl Morey, which goes back a really long way. And their long-standing relationship is a big reason why Harden gets over that trade request and he ends up coming back. He sees that Patrick Beverley's having a good time in Philadelphia. He saw the quotes from Joel Embiid, PJ Tucker. They convince him to come back to try to chase that NBA championship, which inevitably the Sixers will not win because I don't think that Harden is a championship-level player. But you look at this relationship, right, between Harden and Morey. It goes all the way back to October of 2012. This will go down as one of the best trades in the history of the NBA when you factor in the player that the Beard became. That's when Daryl Morey made that trade for Harden in a deal between Houston and the Oklahoma City Thunder, in which Daryl Morey traded away the key piece in that trade to get Harden. It was Jeremy Lamb, the UConn legend. And then in 2017, James Harden signs what was at the time the richest deal ever in the history of the NBA. 5 years later, after Morey comes to Philadelphia, is running basketball operations, he remains patient with the Ben Simmons holdout, and he trades Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and some first-round picks for Harden to come to Philadelphia. And then in June of 2023, after Harden was great in Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston in that second round, they lose in Game 7 in a really ugly way to the Celtics. And then Harden was very unhappy with how Morey handled the pre-free agency process, keeping him and his camp, quote, in the dark. He asked for a trade, and that trade request, according to Ramona Shelburne, is still intact. With Harden, there are a lot of pros. Let's not slight a guy who is going to be a Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, who has been one of the best offensive players of this generation. He has had his fingerprints on the way that the game is played now on the offensive end of the floor, and he is a very good stat patter as a guy who can put the ball in the hoop, very good vision, very good rebounder, and he does impact the game of basketball at a very high level. Elite assist man, led the NBA in dimes last year with almost 11, career best assist-to-turnover ratio, runs the two-man game really well alongside Joel Embiid. Last year, 21 points per game, 44% from the field, 38.5% from three. You could tell he put in some work there, was finally healthy, coming off a couple of hamstring issues the last 2 years. That three-point number, the second best of his career. We talk about what he did in Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston. Very good, three-level scorer. But then there are obviously the concerns with Harden here and the cons. 33 years old, how will he age? He is not always in the best peak shape. He's way too inconsistent, especially when it comes down to the playoffs. No championship pedigree, and he's continued to come up short in some of these big spots when he's in the pressure cooker. And honestly, it looked as though he gave up in that Game 7 against the Celtics. Harden in Philly. It has certainly been a pretty interesting tenure, and I don't care what you say. Even with the Sixers' playoff failures, the trade of Ben Simmons for Harden, a massive win in the book for Daryl Morey, because Ben Simmons hasn't played, Harden has, and he has been extremely productive. Year 1, 21 points per game. Year 2, 21 points per game. In the playoffs, though, you see those numbers do dip a little bit. Can Nick Nurse bring a better James Harden out, as well as Joel Embiid? Tobias Harris, if the Sixers run it back, you have to hope that the Sixers upgraded in coach from Doc Rivers, a.k.a. Glenn Rivers, to Nick Nurse. And if that's the case, maybe they can finally get over that second-round hurdle. Make sure you subscribe to the show for year-round Sixers coverage. We don't only just cover this team when the storylines are hot like they are here in NBA free agency. It's year-round Sixers coverage. On the docket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Subscribe. Join our 76ers Now community. Bold prediction number 2. Even though Daryl Morey had tweeted out that picture of himself in front of the first ever Crumble store in Utah, and he added Tobias Harris on Twitter, he trades Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine. And that is the move that is up Daryl Morey's sleeve that Brian Windhorst had referred to last week. Last 4 years for Lavine, he does not shy away from being a great scorer. And his biggest strength is putting the ball in the cup. And he does that at a very elite level. Still at this point, one of the finer athletes in the NBA, a guy who has pogo sticks for legs, dribble isolation, dribble drive, finishing around the rim, shooting the ball from downtown. He can do it all. In the last 3 years, he has not shot lower than 37.5% from three-point range. A much better scorer, much better playmaker than Tobias Harris, but you would certainly lose some defense in trading away Toby for Zach Lavine unless Nick Nurse can get him engaged there. Because in the Olympics a couple of summers ago, Lavine actually played some pretty solid defense in that international showing. Advanced shooting numbers here for Lavine. On catch-and-shoot threes last year, 41.5%. Pull-up three-pointer, surprisingly low at 34%. One of the best finishers, though, especially when you factor in the volume, 10 feet and in, because he has good touch and very good athleticism to finish in traffic. Almost 63% 10 feet and in, overall ranking there among those categories coming in at 9th. Then here's my trade idea to land Zach Lavine. Bulls get Tobias Harris, and they want to take on an expiring contract here. They want to see what this team is made of. And if they don't play well this year, they can move off Harris after this year. If he plays well, they re-sign him on a fraction of the price at damn near $40 million. Thank you, Elton Brand. DeAnthony Melton also included in that trade, and then a 2030 first-round pick. You have to give up some draft capital as well to net Lavine, who definitely, in my opinion, is the better player as compared to Harris. So if you were to pick one to be on the Sixers roster for this upcoming season, who are you going with here? ZL for Lavine, TH for Tobias Harris. Bold prediction number 3. I think Paul Reed going to start at the 4. You're giving him that 3-year, $23 million contract. He's shown some moments of growth in his first 3 years in the NBA. And Nick Nurse does a really good job of developing players like this. And I think he's really going to be able to develop B-Ball Paul out the mud. First 3 years, barely played year 1, played a little bit more in year 2. And then in year 3, down the stretch, that's when he finally earned the trust of Doc Rivers. I had an issue with Doc Rivers not playing a lot of young players, a.k.a. Glenn Rivers. Can't call him Doc any longer. 4 points per game, almost 4 rebounds, 11 minutes per night. I think his minutes double this year. He ends up starting, and why I think Reed is intriguing, he's a homegrown developmental player who's shown signs of growth. I think anytime you can identify a talent like this and then develop him, it's always something that looks good for your organization. And the fact that the Sixers have lost to Charles Bassey and Isaiah Joe, who were under their ceiling inside their building, is frustrating for Sixers fans because they are cost-controlled assets. Reed can also rim protect and rim run. He's a long athlete who's an active defender. And in today's switching NBA, he can guard on some of those switches and also thrive on some of the drop coverage. He has length to make up for some of that space to get his hand in the eye of a shooter, can thrive as a roll man. We've seen that, taking some passes off that pick and roll, and ideally, he could play the 4, he could play the 5. And can he develop a three-point shot? Because at the G League level, 24 total games with the Delaware Bluecoats, his numbers were insane. 22 points per game, almost 12 rebounds. But what I want to focus on here, not just the defensive ability, almost 2 steals, almost 2 blocks, 43% on threes on almost 4 3-point attempts per game in those 24 games. That is a large enough sample size here. Now, does he shrivel under the bright lights of playing in front of 20,000 instead of a lot of empty gyms like he did at the G League level? Maybe. But can you boost his confidence with better coaching? And now that he's got the bag, will he be more willing to shoot the rock because he's not worrying about damaging his value or worrying about getting benched? Hopefully, because if he could be that stretch 4, that's a nice little element for the Sixers offense. Bold prediction number 4. Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be an all-star this year. I think that he is a blossoming superstar in this league, and I think this is the year where he finally becomes an all-star. You look at what he's done in his first 3 years since being that first-round pick out of Kentucky, falling to the Sixers thanks to Mike Muscala hitting that 3 in the NBA bubble to convert the pick. The Sixers finally lucked out in the draft, and they hit on a first-round draft pick. Year 1, you saw the flashes. Lightning quick going to the rim. But coming out of Kentucky, a lot of people didn't think that he could shoot the three-pointer. Year 2, though, he goes up from 30% from 3 to 42.7, and he doubles his points per game, and his field goal percentage goes up. And then in year 3, his junior season, 20.3 points per game, 48% from the field, north of 43% on his three-point attempts. He was one of the more efficient players, 10 feet and in, because of that really good floater. If he can add a little bit of bulk to his game, maybe he can be Joel Embiid's Jamal Murray type of player. And what's interesting is that Maxey's growth in his first 3 years has been better than what Jamal Murray did in his first 3 years. I'm talking year 4 breakout for Maxey, and he is an all-star this year. Last bold prediction. Jaden Springer going to earn pretty valuable minutes for the Sixers team. I have never been a massive Jaden Springer guy. I wasn't sure that the offensive game was going to translate from Tennessee to Philly. While he's a good vertical leaper, he's not the greatest athlete on the offensive end. He looks slow when he's dribbling the basketball and is methodical with his movements. But can he use that body to his advantage on the offensive end? Can he continue like he's done so far in the Summer League to hit three-pointers at a pretty decent clip? And most importantly, can he give you really good defense? Now, De'Anthony Melton might step in his way, but if Jaden Springer can kind of give you what Melton gives you as well, that's a good backup guard rotation of two players who can play some solid defense and lock down the opposition. So my Sixers bold predictions here: James Harden returns, Daryl Morey trades Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine, Paul Reed will start at the 4, Tyrese Maxey going to be an all-star, and Jaden Springer will have consistent rotation minutes. Don't shy away from getting down into that comment section here. What is your bold Sixers prediction? Have some fun with it, get creative, and be bold about it right now on 76ers Now. All right, let's take a look at the chat here. Bruce Davis, yes, sir. Free B-ball Paul. Eagles Guru, can Nurse turn Paul Reed into Chris Boucher? Very good point. And I've talked about Chris Boucher's development here on the show, where he kind of developed that corner 3. Ideally, Paul Reed will be able to do that. Eagles Guru, good intellect right there. John, I think we should start P.J. Tucker instead of Paul Reed. That's why it's a bold prediction. Like if I had my realistic guess, maybe P.J. Tucker does start. But Paul Reed, I think, could start some games this year. Tyler, wish the Sixers went out and got Drummond again. Bulls got a deal for him. Yeah, I was actually surprised he went back to Chicago. I think he would have been a great backup to Embiid here. Mo Bamba, I'm somewhat intrigued, though. Good athlete, can shoot the 3. King Chris, we need players. That's why earlier we were talking about some of those vet men deals. Are we done talking about Lillard from Jay Dunn? As of right now, probably. Boombastic, bold prediction. Sixers run it back. First round exit. My goodness, wouldn't that be a disaster? G-Man 0158. If we were to trade James Harden and Tobias Harris for Damian Lillard, do you think that would work out? I don't. It's not enough for Portland because Harden's 34, Tobias Harris is on an expiring deal, Damian Lillard is older, but the whole point in trading him is to get back a very sizable package, but to rebuild and add to their young collection of talent that I actually really like. I think Scoot Henderson going to be a really good player. I like Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, a little bit spotty and inconsistent, but I think that he can play as well. They want young players back. Draft assets, young players, not older players like James Harden and Tobias Harris, who are both 30-plus years old. Here's our Super Chat menu for today. If you want to donate to the show and send us a tip, $5 beer cheers, $10 will spin the wheel, $20 for some shots, $50 for a beer bong, $100 for a shotgun. We were up to $15 in donations on the program today. Thank you so kindly for everybody who has sent in that Super Chat. Cheers to everybody for watching as well. One more segment to touch on, and then we can continue to stay live if you send us in some Super Chats or answer some of your questions as well.
I'll give a chase, or I'll give an offer out to the people.
Chase down an offer.
Yeah. $50. It's usually like one $50 Super Chat, we do a beer bong. I will be willing to do a beer bong if we get $50 total by the time we end this final segment, so probably about 10, 12 minutes from now.
We're at 15 right now.
If we can get 35 in total Super Chats in the next 15 minutes, I'll do a beer bong.
There you go. So 35 over the next 10 to 15 minutes, he'll do a beer bong. And you know what? I'll do a beer bong as well if we get to 50. Double beer bong if we get to 50 in total. Again, thank you so much for supporting the show. It allows us to give you content damn near every day at this point, multiple times per day, right here on 76ers Now. Want to round out the show with this. Bleacher Report posed a James Harden for Jrue Holiday trade. We're going to dive into that and take some of your questions. It's coming your way right now. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but I'm certainly intrigued by the idea because I think Jrue Holiday, Sixers legend, by the way, would be an awesome addition to this basketball team. Bleacher Report posed a blockbuster James Harden for Jrue Holiday trade. We're talking about that on 76ers Now, and we're answering questions from some of our loyal subscribers. So Bleacher Report put together this article of some blockbuster trades that could happen in the NBA leading up to the 2023-2024 season. And here is the deal from Bleacher Report here. The Sixers would receive Jrue Holiday and a 2024 second-round pick, and then going to Milwaukee to get paired up with Giannis as well as Chris Middleton is James Harden. Now, I think it's kind of crazy that Bleacher Report has the Bucks including a second-round pick to take on James Harden. I would do this deal immediately, just straight up, but Bleacher Report, they have other ideas. Here's what they had to say on that Harden-Holiday swap. If the Bucks learned anything from their injury-riddled season last year, it's that their offense might need a little buffing. They wound up a forgettable 15th in offensive efficiency, or 10 spots back of where their title team landed in 2020-2021. Maybe a healthy Chris Middleton is all they need to get back on track, but are they sure about that? Bumping Middleton down to the third option and slotting in the beard in between him and Giannis could have folks fearing the deer again. Harden Antetokounmpo pick and rolls could be unstoppable. Middleton Antetokounmpo pick and rolls would be too if Harden was brought in to an off-ball role. So I think there are some fair points there, right? From a basketball standpoint. And remember, the Jrue Holiday trade, which took place 10 years ago this week, actually kick-started the process. They traded him away, they drafted Michael Carter-Williams, and Sam Hinkie started to put his imprint on the Sixers organization. But from a basketball standpoint here, right, James Harden is really good in the two-man game. Pick and pop, pick and roll. You pair him with Giannis, who's probably a better pick and roll player than Joel Embiid, doesn't have the mid-range game on the pick and pop that Embiid has. It would be a combination that other teams certainly fear across the NBA. Here's the thing, though. I would rather have Jrue Holiday over James Harden at this point because I think he's a better fit on the Sixers team and certainly a better defensive player and better leader. So pick a point guard that you would rather have on the Sixers this upcoming year. Type Harden or type Jrue. We are taking your feedback down below in the comment section. As always, you can join that conversation. As for what Holiday has done in his last 4 years, again, not the scorer that Harden is, not the distributor and rebounder that Harden is. Better two-way player overall, though. There's certainly an argument to be had. And Jrue Holiday, kind of a slow-developing player. When he was playing with the Sixers, they drafted him in the first round out of UCLA, had a couple of good moments, certainly didn't develop into a borderline superstar and future all-star that he's become. And over his last 4 years, he's kind of hovered around 17 to 19 points per game. He is a pretty good assist man, just not to the level of James Harden. Not a bad rebounder by any stretch of the imagination. And he's added a three-point shot to his game as compared to when he was playing for Philly, 38%, 41+, 39%, and 35% over the last 4 years. He also doesn't shy away from the big moment like we've seen James Harden do in so many playoff games. Jrue Holiday, ladies and gentlemen, is an NBA champion, and he has an NBA champion type of mindset where he's fearless. He's not afraid to take the big shot. He makes winning basketball plays, and he would never give up in a big Game 7 like James Harden did on the road, TD Garden, pressure cooker against the Boston Celtics. Harden, on the other hand, is not an NBA champion. So I would do this deal. I really would. I just don't think Milwaukee, in any scenario, would actually make that trade. Your questions coming up here around the corner, but first, this is your home for year-round Sixers coverage. We are approaching 12,000 subscribers, so hit that sub button right now. Eagles Guru with the $5 donation. Wendy said that Morey has something up his sleeve. The best two guesses as to what that is. Now, we were talking about this during our live show. If we want to go bold, I'm saying Zach Lavine trade for Tobias Harris and some other pieces. And then Rolly was talking about Pascal Siakam. Both moves I would like, and both moves I think improves this club. Lion Fighter also with the $5 super chat. Real one, roll call. Who would you prefer, Zach Lavine or Pascal Siakam, and why? I'm going Lavine. He's not the defensive player that Siakam is. He is, though, the better offensive player. Siakam is somewhat limited. While he has developed a three-point shot, his numbers the last few years have kind of dipped, whereas Lavine last three hasn't shot below 37.5% from three-point range. Lavine is a walking 20 to 30 points per game guy every single night. Whereas Siakam, you have to live with some of the highs and lows. Boombastic. Harden still wants out. Maxey is the long-term point guard. Who can we really get to replace James Harden at that 2 spot? So yeah, Maxey hasn't really played a lot of point. He is capable of playing the point. Even at Kentucky, he played primarily off ball. So that is a role where he'd have to get a little bit more comfortable in operating the offense, and he'd have to improve his passing ability a little bit. At that 2 spot, I think a guy like Norm Powell could be a realistic trade acquisition for Philadelphia if that trade of Harden to the Clippers, which has had a lot of momentum and buzz, ends up happening. But here's my prediction, Boombastic. I actually think James Harden comes back. He runs the point. Maxey at the 2. Tommy Velasquez, we need to build a strong bench. Let's take a look at that roster court, Rolly, to look at the Sixers team. A couple of days ago, even last week, I was saying, like, this Sixers bench is not good at all. Let's just say that the Sixers run it back here. This would be their current lineup. Harden as the point, Maxey as the 2, PJ Tucker for his defense stays at the 4, Toby is your wing, and Joel Embiid, your anchor as your great and elite two-way player. Your bench is a little bit better than it was just a few days ago. Like Patrick Beverley, solid point guard. If he ends up hitting more three-pointers, that deal on the vet min could be a steal. I was very happy with them bringing back Paul Reed, even though 3 years, $23 million is a lot for him. He's going to have to develop to live up to that price tag. But in today's NBA, some of these deals are stupid. Like Dylan Brooks is making $20 million per. You have DeAnthony Melton and Daniel House as well. Daniel House showed me a lot in that series against Boston. Jane Springer having a solid summer league. The offensive game is going to have to get a little bit better. Montrezl Harrell signing never made sense to me. I think he's so far cooked. I want to see if the Sixers can either let go of or try to trade Furkan Korkmaz to a team that is looking for a shooter. Korkmaz in the final year of his deal, that gives him $5 million annually. Mo Bamba, I actually like him as a backup to Joel Embiid if he can be more consistent. Most importantly, though, stay healthy. Stupid athlete who can hit the 3. And then Filip Petrusev. Nick Nurse said on the Tyrese Maxey podcast that Petrusev is going to make the team. We'll see if he wasn't going tongue-in-cheek with that one. Grade the Sixers roster right now. We take the question, then we break it down. It's on the NBA 2K meter, 1 to 100. Ryan Rowe, big supporter of what I do here on 76ers Now and on Eagles Now. Could we see Terquavion Smith playing alongside Tyrese Maxey? Look, if Turk Smith is starting games and getting a lot of minutes night in and night out, I think that would be a little bit of an issue. Now, the realistic question here, Ryan Rowe, is he going to make the opening night roster? Will he be a part of this bench unit? Maybe not getting many minutes, 5-10 minutes per game to start. He's a little bit slight, but he certainly has the athletic explosion to succeed at the NBA level. His efficiency was a problem at NC State. There were nights where he would go off for 20-plus points. There were other nights in which he would have a clunker and be 5 of 15. So far in the Summer League, he's right around 37, 38% from 3 with a lot of range as well. I'm rooting for him to make this team as a young developmental piece who's also very affordable, which only helps your team-building strategy moving ahead into the future. Walter Miller, one of our biggest real ones here on the show. Why is Korkmaz still on the team when he's also asked about a trade request before the deadline last year? The reason they didn't trade him, no value for him. They weren't going to get anything back. I actually thought during that Hawks series 3 years ago now, Korkmaz was hitting some big shots. They were using him as the DHO man on those dribble handoffs, and he was hitting some threes internationally. He's played pretty good for the homeland, but he's been way too inconsistent in the last 2 years. I think he's suffered from a lack of confidence. I'm with you, though. I think he's a trade candidate, or maybe he's a cut candidate as we approach the season. $5 million per, they could certainly use that money right now. And I like the deal at the time. I will certainly eat the crow on that. G-Man, if we were to trade James Harden and Tobias Harris for Damian Lillard, do you think that would work out? I don't think it would work out at all, because if you're the Portland Trailblazers, they want to trade Dame to kickstart this rebuild with some of the young assets that they have on that team. Scoot Henderson, I think, is going to be a star in this league. Anthony Simons can give you 20 points per game. I like Shaedon Sharpe. They have a decent roster with some young pieces. You're not going to take on Tobias Harris on an expiring deal and James Harden on an expiring deal, especially when Harden, the marquee player in that deal, is 34 years old, and you're trading Dame because you have this admission that you're not competing this year. You're not going to compete this year with James Harden either. Philly John Wick, elite username, by the way. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are we to trade anyone? I say 3 or 4. I would say somewhat low. You know, Daryl Morey, he did say, or he tweeted out a picture of himself in front of that crumble cookie and saying, hey, Tobias, no casuals here. Like, if he says that and then trades him away, kind of is a bad look on Daryl Morey's part. And then James Harden, I think that relationship is going to be able to be repaired between the Beard and Morey. Both of them return. The Sixers run it back. And then maybe at the NBA trade deadline, that's when they could make a move with the hyperactive and aggressive Daryl Morey. Before we dip on out of here for this segment, interact with me, Twitter, Instagram, if you want some Sixers takes, at Chase_Senior on both of those platforms here. It's been great to get to know all of you. I want to get to know more of you. So say what's up in the DMs here. All right, 4 segments down. Lamont Lancaster, another one of our real ones. Daryl is not Howie. He is not. He is a good executive, but he is not Howie Roseman level, where Howie is the best executive in the NFL. All right, our Super Chat menu here, what we're going to do. We've done 4 segments today. I think it's been some great content. Chase Senior, Nick Roloff here with you. We're going to go 2 minutes on the shot clock here. 2 minutes on the shot clock. If somebody sends in a Super Chat within 2 minutes, we're going to stay live. If nobody sends in a Super Chat within the next 2 minutes, we're going to sign off, and I'm actually going to have to do some other work. So if you want to keep me from actually doing work here at Chat Sports, send in a Super Chat. We'll continue to chop it up with everybody out there. Our Super Chat menu, 5 for a beer cheers, 10 spin the wheel, 20 shots, 50 beer bong, 100 for a shotgun. Anthony Gonzalez, we reset the Super Chat shot clock in the early going. Your thoughts on signing Christian Wood from the Dallas Mavericks? $2 Super Chat. Let's go thoughts on Wood. We actually talked about Christian Wood a little bit earlier when we discussed some vet min targets that the Sixers could sign, Anthony. And for Christian Wood, the ability is not the issue. I like his game. Stretch 4, can knock down the 3 at a very high clip, kind of hovers between 37-40% from downtown. The problem, though, Sixers have a logjam in that front court. He is an awful defensive player. Everywhere he's been, people have questioned his cultural fit in the locker room. There's been some weird stuff coming out from his agent, but a cheap stretch 4, I'm somewhat intrigued by the idea. But if he ruins your locker room culture and he's bad defensively, that's why he's still out there on the open market as a guy who's put up plenty of really solid numbers. Almost a minute into our 2-minute shot clock. Another Super Chat. We reset. We continue to chop it up with everybody out there. Vincent, Maxey is about as natural as a shooting guard as you will find. He also said Maxey better off ball, not a natural facilitator and ball pounder. Yeah, he could pressure the rim for sure. Sometimes he needs that head of steam to get to the rack. But yes, you are right. He looks more comfortable playing off ball, and that's probably why up to this point he's played a lot more off ball than being the primary facilitator. 30 seconds left. Anthony Gonzalez, I wasn't on. What do you mean? What's up, Rolly?
I don't know. I want to go back to the Christian Wood thing. I was like, I don't think it really makes sense for Philadelphia to be the team as Albert Rice resets the shot clock.
Resets the clock! Albert Rice!
I just don't see the fit for Philadelphia. Do they need more front court scoring if it's going to hurt their defense?
Yeah.
Probably not, because you have the MVP in Joel Embiid. I think where the Sixers could get better is someone who can light it up from the outside as a forward, as a guard, and not disappear in the biggest games while attacking the rim.
Right.
And sure, Christian Wood can score from almost everywhere on the court, but I don't think it's worth it. He's got to kind of have the ball in his hands to be successful.
Yeah.
He's not going to have that. So, I don't know. I think a team like, honestly, it's bad to say, but like Miami, I think is a really good fit for him if he could come off the bench and help lead a scoring unit that doesn't feature a Jimmy Butler or a Bam.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it makes sense to go to a team that is always going to have someone who dominates the ball like Embiid, like Harden, like Maxey would.
I think he is the prototypical Bill Simmons reference here. Good stats, bad team play.
Yeah.
I really think
Very
that.
similar to Kelly Oubre, who we talked about as well.
Exactly right. Exactly right. 2 more $5 super chats. Albert Rice, thank you, my guy. And then Lamont Lancaster, a real one here on the show, also resetting the super chat shot clock. We're going back to 2 minutes. He says 9-8 76ers, 10-9-8 76ers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers. Lamont, thank you, my guy. Beer cheers to Lamont as well as Albert Rice. All right, no 10s in yet. If you send in a 10, you become our Super Chat MVP, and you get a custom graphic here on the show. So 10, custom graphic here on the show, and we get to spin the wheel for the first time.
Yeah, I spent some time making it.
Yeah, Nick spent some time making it. So you get the 10, you get a custom graphic, you become our Super Chat MVP.
Oh!
Anthony Fuller! First time Super Chatter. Anthony Fuller checking in with the 5. Here we go. Thoughts on a Philadelphia Clippers Dallas trade? With Harden going to LA, I could see Dallas looking to upgrade center with Zubac, and Hardaway would be a good piece for us as well. The problem with Dallas here, though, is that Dallas has way too many centers. They have to try to get rid of JaVale McGee, maybe even a Rashawn Holmes. They drafted Derek Lively. They re-signed Norm Powell. So, yes, they could use an upgrade at center. Zubac, I actually think, would be a really good fit on Dallas, but they have to get rid of centers in that deal. And Harden going to L.A., Dwight Powell, sorry. Harden going to L.A., thanks, Chugs. I could see Dallas looking to upgrade from center. But who would the Sixers get? Anthony Fuller. That's the issue here. I mean, you give away James Harden, who do you get? Maybe you get Norm Powell, is probably why I said that. You get Rocco. I mean, I would really like Terrence Mann in that backcourt. Albert Rice! $20 Super Chat. He becomes our Super Chat MVP.
Albert Rice says,
Albert Rice.
Boom. What is that profile picture? Is it Rice?
I think it's coffee.
Coffee? Okay.
I want to say coffee.
I couldn't tell.
I believe we should trade James and Toby. And Toby gets traded to the Bulls for Lavine and DeRozan coming back. Oh, so you say Harden and Harris to the Bulls for Lavine and DeRozan. You know what? I've thought about this a little bit. I would say fuck it. I would say do it. You know, Maxey DeRozan as your backcourt. I don't like that DeRozan doesn't shoot the 3. That's a little bit of an issue, but Lavine does. Maxey can shoot the 3. Embiid can shoot the 3. I would do it. Change of scenery for both
James
teams.
And Toby.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The contracts match up too.
If this
Cheers,
is one
Albert.
of those rare times that 4 guys like that, like Maxey, Lavine, DeRozan, and Embiid is one hell of a squad.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things that it's a cliche that people use too often, like there's only one ball.
Yeah.
But there truly is one ball. I don't know how the 4 of them can all be effective when there is one ball.
Can Nick Nurse make it work? Also, Anthony saying Powell, Morris, and Hardaway to the Sixers in that deal. Hardaway's pretty expensive since the injury to his foot. Doesn't really have the playmaking ability that he had and is kind of a standstill shooter at this point. So that's a little bit of a problem. Powell, not a bad backup center, but then again, you kind of run to that front court logjam a little bit. Running it back, 2-minute shot clock. Let's give Albert Rice, Super Chat MVP. Rolly already did it. Albert Rice, my man. And are we still doing these beer bongs? Hey, we'll do it for Albert. We said if we got past 50, we do a beer bong. Albert puts us over the top with the 20 there. Yeah, if you want to get me a beer bong, I'll do one with you. Anthony Fuller also said, but fair on Hardaway. Anthony Fuller, Norm Powell, not Dwight Powell. Okay, so that is a true three-team trade right there. So, Fuller, you did your research, man. That's good shit. Will Curry be traded in the next 2 years, are you talking Steph? I don't think Steph will. I think he's a lifelong Warrior. Unless he rounds out his career with the Charlotte Hornets. He grew up in the Charlotte area. Seth Curry going to the Mavs, a great deal. I can't believe the Sixers didn't entertain bringing him back. They got him on the biannual. It's like $4 or $5 million. What great value for a guy who's going to be able to knock down with ease more than 40% of his threes. And alongside Luka and Kyrie, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. The thing is, when Seth Curry, Luka, and Kyrie are on the floor, they could not stop my lovely Grandma Ruth. They just couldn't do it. Tyler, Denver and the Heat have shown the league that developing your team instead of star searching can have its benefits. Let's see what Nick Nurse can do and run it back. It's not a bad point. I've certainly thought about that a lot as well, of consistency and continuity and the benefits of just having the same team that knows each other really well, that has a really good continuity and camaraderie. And Denver and Miami, two great examples of that. All right, about 10 seconds left on our Super Chat shot clock here. If you want us to stay live, you send in a super, we will stay live. If not, we'll sign off. We'll call it a day. Not before, though. We do a couple of beer bungs here for Albert Rice as we got over $50 in Super Chats here. Albert Rice, our Super Chat MVP, most valuable player. Happy Dad's going down the gullet. Great show today. Awesome numbers. Great content. Thanks to everybody who's been here. If you missed it, just go back and watch it. Plenty of content on the show. Cheers, mates. Rolly will do his. And then we'll sign off here. Yeah, I just did mine. Tony Wiley, Sixers are in trouble. James Harden will start acting out this year and tear that locker room apart. Does he have enough respect, though, for Embiid, Patrick Beverley, and PJ Tucker to not do that? And do those players have enough say in the locker room to not allow James Harden to do that conversely? You'd hope so. Tyler, not on a year where he has to prove his worth to get some money and next year's free agency. That would be silly. Tyler, you're completely right. I mean, look, as Rolly's about to do his Murbanga, if James Harden opted in to the $35.5 million player option, he did that because he realized that he was not going to get a lot of money elsewhere in free agency or get the deal that he had anticipated and thought he was going to land when free agency started. Van Vliet gets $40 million. Harden probably looked at the market, was like, I'm not going to even get $35.5 million from another team. I think teams are tired of the antics. They're tired of the playoff no-shows. So you make a great point, Tyler. This is a guy who's going into his age 34 season. When he's a free agent, he will be 35. A lot of mileage on the tires. Play starting to decline with the injuries increasing. Playoff performances, he hides, he collapses, and then he's forced his way out of now Houston, Brooklyn, and asked for a trade out of Philadelphia. Our team's just like, look, we're done. We're not going to give you any big money for a declining asset who doesn't play off in the biggest or doesn't show up in the biggest of moments. And now he has to prove his worth this year. So he has to be on his best behavior. You would at least think. If not, we're looking at a quick end to his career potentially. All right, that does it for today's 76ers Now. About 3,000 people tuned in throughout the day. A lot of you hung out with us for the entire duration. As I'm looking at the analytics here, it was a lot of fun. Look, we continue to get numbers like this. We're going to continue to go live right here on 76ers Now. It would not be possible without all of your support. Mr. Awesome Guy is here. We're about to sign off. 4 segments in the can. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. We'll catch you next time. Make sure you subscribe. Turn on those notifications as well, because therefore when we push out a show or when we go live, you will be notified. All you have to do is hit that bell icon. Let's go Sixers. We'll catch you next time. Peace.